Theology is literally the study of God, but more generally, it's about trying to make sense of life, the universe, and everything from a Christian perspective. But what is it based upon? Until 500 years ago, the way the church viewed the world was based mainly on the traditions that it handed down from generation to generation. Then, in 1517, Martin Luther suggested that those traditions should be compared with what is written in Scripture. About 80 years later, an English theologian called Richard Hooker added what he called reason into this list. These three sources, tradition, Scripture and reason, are sometimes referred to as the three-legged stool of Anglicanism and are regarded as the foundation of Anglican theology to this day. But this doesn't seem quite right to me. The three legs seem quite different in nature. To me, Scripture and tradition feel like sources of knowledge, whereas reason is the capacity to think about these and make sense of them. I'd thus prefer to think of reason as the mechanism for interpreting what we find in Scripture and tradition. To me, this works better as a picture if we depict reason as a circle encompassing the two sources of knowledge. The next contribution was that of John Wesley, who considered experience as being important as well. Taking this on board, we have reason as a mechanism for making sense of what we find in Scripture and tradition, and through experience. This is essentially what Methodism believes today. If you go to the Methodist Church website, you'll see it described as the Methodist quadrilateral. This was all very well in Wesley's time, but history didn't stop with his death, and things have changed considerably since. One of the biggest changes has been the rise of science, which isn't referred to at all in Wesley's quadrilateral. We can't really blame Wesley for ignoring this. Science as we know it today was only just beginning to emerge in his time. He can have had no inkling that one day science would have a credible explanation for how the universe came into being, or would have explained almost all diseases in terms of biochemical changes within different cells of the body. So how does science fit into this picture? For most of the last 200 years, theology has been spectacularly unimaginative and seen science as a separate domain which has had little impact on the way it thinks. When theology and science have interacted, they've tended to argue and fight. If we're honest, religion has been much more bruised by these encounters than science, to the point today where many people see Christianity as having been largely discredited by science. But if we calm things down and reflect for a moment, there may be another way of looking at these ideas. I think there is, and the more perceptive of you will have spotted a clue in the way I've drawn this diagram, with space for one more circle beside experience, Scripture and tradition. Theologians should not be seeing science as an enemy in their quest to make sense of the world. They should be seeing it as a friend. What would happen if we modified these diagrams so that theologians use the knowledge that we've been granted through science rather than simply ignoring it? Rather than seeing Scripture, tradition and experience as only three sources of knowledge, we should add science as a fourth. It's my belief that this is a much more sensible approach to ensuring that we continue to develop theology in a way that continues to be relevant to the modern world.